What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to more Black Desert. My name is John, and it's a new month, and that means we are going to do another episode of our window shopping series. If you've never watched one, I'll leave a link in the description to the previous month. Basically, we look and talk about trends on notable items on the central market. I give you my experience and opinions on is it better to buy it, make it, and how to go about preparing for that, assuming you're like at the end game and certain items are just you have to make it yourself. So we look at trends from month to month, and we just see what's worth enhancing for profit, things that are going up and down, all that cool stuff. So yeah, I know a lot has changed in 1 month because we had a drop rate event going on, and I believe it's still going on. So certain accessories have been going up and down. I've noticed some various trends overall. And wow, I have 5 billion in the bank. I have never been so poor in BDO. Ever since that Labreska enhancing video from last week. If you haven't caught it, 135 billion silver down the drain enhancing. Fun stuff. I'll leave that in the description as well. So anyway, what I like to talk about is the notable items, and I want to keep this more towards people who are past seasonal. So let's say you are full pen to Vala, right? So around the 240 area, and you're going into the mid game or the end game. So that's where I talk about these items, and I'll give you a lot of opinions on some of the stuff we talked about last week as well. So in this category, we're doing main hand. And a lot of you guys are either at the Zarka level or transitioning into Black Star. So I say this every month in the video, and people always ask me, is it better to get Offhand or Zarka? So if you were to ask me this 2 years ago, Offhand is good at a very specific bracket. And when I say bracket, I mean this is what I'm talking about. So if you hover over here and you see your AP and everything, and it says like number and then parentheses at certain brackets like 261, 265 at +4 every time, it puts you into a new bracket number. So at a certain point, like I believe 261 to 269 with Offhand, that was when it was better. But the time when you can hit 261 with a Zarka is when you should convert over to that. So that was how it was back in the day. Realistically now it's pretty easy to just get a pen Zarka. I'm pretty sure it's what, like 5-6 billion. Yeah. So when it comes to Jatina weapons, this is often a question I get asked a lot. So when you go to Jatina and you try to make your weapon and armor for the first time, the number for a weapon would be 6.5 billion silver. I have a video basically making a pen dandy just for the sake of doing a tutorial video. I didn't even need it. So I'll leave that in the video or description as well. If you want to see how to go about doing it, I literally listed all the items you need, how to get them, and we did it live. So you guys can literally follow along. So for weapons, if the weapon you have or the weapon you're going for is cheaper than 6.5 billion for the first one, it's better to just buy it off the market than craft it from Jatina. And so we're looking at Zarkas right now, and just as a baseline, generally I would say Zarka is better for people who are looking to do everything in the game. That means PvE and PvP. And the reasoning why is because it gives you more accuracy. And so you see over here, it's at pen 200 accuracy, right? And then at pen for Offhand, you trade off a little bit of accuracy for more AP. So that's why we were talking about the brackets before. However, we'll get to this a little bit later when we talk about accessories. 18 accuracy is basically the equivalent of probably like either a tri or tet accessory. And that actually converts to a lot of extra silver, but that's like late game transitioning gear. So generally, I would just say Zarka until you think you're ready to go for Black Star. And then Black Star is arguably the best in slot right now. And like I think the difference if you were to go Zarka C20 versus Blackstar is probably I think at Capris 20 it's about 100 billion, and then a Pen Blackstar is like 110 billion, so that's the difference. The stats are basically the same. You get more grinding PvE monster damage, but you're paying 10 bill more for it. So I think it's still worth it overall, because most of the time the best way to make silver in this game is, for most people, it's going to be grinding, myself included, unless you are at like the literal 1% and you know how to do life skilling at the highest level. So there's that. But for the rest of us, chances are you're going to be making the most of your silver from grinding. So I do think Black Stars are worth it. Every month we've been looking at the trend for this, and Black Stars are basically at an all-time low right now, because there's just more of them on the market every month. So I think it's just going to go down, and at the lowest point, let's say 5 months from now, maybe a year from now, I think the lowest price the Black Stars will be is probably like 102, 103 billion, maybe 100. The reasoning why is Capricing it to 20 is basically the same cost as 100, 102 billion. So if we calculate that and factor into monster damage, we add like a 1-2 bill. There's no arbitrary number, but yeah, roughly around like 105 is probably going to be what it's at, unless they add some completely new item into the game that just makes it worth more or less. So yeah, if you're thinking about buying a Pen Blackstar, now is probably the best time. You could realistically put it at min price, and an order will fill at some point. All right, so let's go into Awakening Weapons. And all these weapons are basically the same max min price, so it doesn't matter what we look at. Okay, so let's talk about Dandy versus Blackstar. So as a beginner, you're going to have a Dandelion, because that is just the one they give you, and the one they give you from transitioning from seasonal to post-season. Basically, it works the same way, but here's a little bit of a difference. So if you look at my Pen Blackstar right now, it has 12 accuracy, whereas a Pen Dandy does not have any accuracy on it. The way you would get accuracy on your Dandelion is by Capricing it all the way to 20. Keep in mind, when you get to the point of transitioning into a Blackstar, you have to take out all your Capra stones, and then that's losing a lot of silver. So generally what people do is get their Dandelion at Pen to like Capris 9 or something. Well, I guess they would go to like all the way to 20, but like just know you're losing a lot of money, to the point where if you're thinking about getting a Dandy and going all the way to Pen Blackstar, instead of Capricing it, what I would do is just go the Godar route, and Godar, whatever, however it's called. So instead of Capricing it, the way I would do it is never make it yourself, because if you have a Tet Blackstar, that's fine. You can convert it into a Godai and like enhance it up to Duo. The thing that I would be careful of when you're going this route, this goes for main hands and everything as well, is keep in mind that eventually you're going to sell it back. And most of the time that going to Tet, I guess depending on the price, can or may not be worth it. So I don't really know. If you're thinking about going for the Blackstar Pen route, just know that it's probably better to just straight up buy it than enhance it all the way, because it's a little bit less crons, or like half of it, but the percentage of success comes out to lower. And I believe I've talked to a lot of people, Biohack included, and he said basically it's not worth it. And if you guys know who Biohack is, he's basically the guy who enhances a lot. So I trust his math more than most people's, and that's what he said. So here's what I would do. If you can get it up to try, that's fine, because that'll probably put you in a decent bracket. And then once you save up more money, you could sell the try and then just straight up buy your pen, because it's only going down in price from now. So like it's not too bad. So yeah, Capricing Dandy is a little bit outdated now, but like it doesn't hurt. I wouldn't go all the way to 20. I would probably just go to like, I don't know, whatever you think is good until you can get enough for the Godar or Blackstar route. All right, let's talk about sub-weapons, because this one is a little bit tricky, and it is also dependent on what class you play. So, as a general baseline, Kudum is PvP, or not PvP, PvE. Nuver is PvP. Blackstar is PvE. It's basically Kudum, but with extra monster damage. The difference between Kudum at Capris 20 pen versus a Blackstar is you're trading like 2 accuracy for a little bit of extra monster damage. Is it worth it? Not really. It's basically the same thing. So if you already have a Kudum 20 and you're thinking, oh, should I get the Blackstar? You're trading 2 accuracy for like 2 monster damage. That's about it. So is it worth it? Do you like having 3 of the same items? If so, yes, it's worth it. If you have 2 Blackstars and a Kudum and you don't care how it looks, then it doesn't matter. So my stance on going for Godar or Godai, I'm gonna mess that up. Godai versus Blackstar is basically the same thing. So if you are enhancing for profit, I think straight up the best thing to do is probably continue to make the awakening weapons. I guess it depends on which one, but generally, historically, over time, the awakening weapons are the ones worth making, just because they sell for more and have the same rates as the other ones. So yeah, when it comes to sub weapons though, it's not worth making for profit. Trust me on that. You're better off making another Blackstar. It is very difficult to say which one you should get, because like if you like PvPing, then get the Nuver. If you only like grinding, get the Kudum or Blackstar. Either one's fine. And if you also like PvPing, there's accuracy, offhands, and all that, evasion offhands. That's a whole different story. It depends on your class. I can't talk about all of them, but by that time you kind of know what you need. And so yeah, fun stuff. Good luck getting to Garmoth Sarts. I have made my rant so many times on how I would fix Garmoth, and they are actually making quality of life improvements, which is really nice. But I've made my stance on how I would fix the entire Garmoth market and everything. So if you've seen it, you've seen it. All right, next. Let's talk about armors. So I'll talk about this one time, and it's basically going to be the same thing for everything in terms of the Fallen God upgrade. So for the helmet part, there's 2 options, Gaiath and Griffin, as a beginner to intermediate level. I would personally recommend Griffin over to Gaiath. Is it going to help you? Barely, but one is a little bit better in my opinion, just until you can get the best in slot one, which is the Labreska later. So what's the difference? The Griffin helmet gives you 5% all resistances, and the Gaiath gives 100 HP to your total health pool. So if you're doing any sort of PvPing, at a certain gear point, the winner is basically decided on who gets the first CC, because class balance in this game is basically non-existent. If you play a Zerker, you just win. So resistances are, sometimes they feel like a meme, but sometimes they work, and resistances over that 100 extra HP. So for most of them right now, except for the shoes, we'll talk about the best in slot upgrades, which are the Fallen God, Labreska, and the Dahn gloves. So eventually your goal is to get this. This is current best in slot, and I'll tell you what stacks I would use to enhance it. So let's say you got your first helm, and you're wondering, okay, so what stack should I use on it? The answer is I would start with like 80 on from base to pry, and like you can do 80 to 100. It doesn't really matter, but like I would, if you are very strict on what stacks you would use, I would probably start with like 80 at very minimum, And if you have a lot of fail stacks and you're just like, oh, I have like 100 stacks just sitting around, just use 100. I don't care. And then I think the general rule is going up by like 30 to 40 per tier up until Tet, and then you just kind of use the highest one you have. So from Labreska base to Pry, 100 or 80 to, I guess, 120. And then Pry to Duo, you're probably going to start with 120. If you guys have watched my Dahn gloves enhancing, dude, I went up to like 170 on this one, and it was not pretty from Pry to Duo. And man, that was a fun video. We lit like 60 billion on fire trying to go for it, and here we are. So Duo to try, most people would recommend starting at like a 150 all the way to a 200. I would recommend probably around a like 170 route to be like average, I guess. And you also have to do some calculations on how much it costs on your server. So you're probably wondering, what should I get it at? If yours is more than 70 build, and you probably use a higher fail stack. If it's less than it and there's actually some sitting on the market, you probably want to use a different one. And then from try to Tet, I personally used a 245 for every single one of them going for Tet. And like, if you look at the price difference, sometimes it's been at like 180 billion down to like 150. And so I think because this item at Tet is more expensive than the others, it is okay to use the highest stack you have, and by highest I probably mean under like a 280. So because this is worth more than Black Stars and probably the most expensive item next to Labreska accessories, it's okay to use a high stack on it. All right, let's go to armors. Same pattern when you go to Fallen God, same stacks and everything. The difference between this nowadays is Red Nose versus Dimtree. If you were to ask me which one to get 5 years ago, Dimtree would have always been the better choice, because the 200 extra HP to your total HP pool is a lot more valuable than increased HP recovery. So what did they do? They made Red Nose cost less Capris to get to Capris 10 to convert to Fallen God. And I think nowadays, if you can get Capris off the market at under max price, it also depends on how much this costs. So let's look at it. A pen Red Nose is, let's say, between 11.6 to 13 billion. Cool. And the red or Dimtree is 9 billion or 10 to 8.6. Now, the extra amount of Capris stones you would have to put in is, I think, 1,000 extra. I'm not 100% sure, but from 9 to 10 it costs a different amount, or actually no, it's like a different amount all the way through, so never mind, scratch that. But either way, you might want to look up a chart. It just costs more to put into Dimtree than it does Red Nose, but it also depends on how much you're buying the pen at, if you are buying it yourself. If you got it from the Magnus, then just Red Nose, pick that one and go from there. Then once you get the Fallen God armor, basically same stacks, and everything works as the same as Labreska. All right, so now we are going into the gloves territory. Now this is where things get a little bit different. Beg's gloves are, let's say, 14 billion. Liber gloves are 9 billion. So there actually is a right and wrong answer for this one. Well, I guess it more considers when you are getting to late game. So there are two types of builds most people go for: accuracy and evasion. Beg's gloves are accuracy, whereas Liber's are evasion. And this is where the beginner trap begins. So if you look at it, most people just look at this DP number, right? And they see 62 DP, which is 62 onto your sheet. And then people see this one, and it's like 60, And it's like, okay, 60 DP, but it's 14 billion, but this one gives 62 and it's 9 billion. And you're probably wondering, like, wow, why should I buy the one that's less and it costs more? So accuracy and evasion is really affected by the class you play. And some classes do better by stacking more evasion, such as like ninjas and kunos, and I guess a lot of other classes too, but those are the two examples I can think of. Whereas accuracy is generally going to be better for most people because evasion, you have to stack it really high to the point where it's effective in PvP. And if you are planning on grinding the very high-end spots like 300 to 320 AP zones, DR is a little bit better. So evasion, it's like very sketch. So for very high-end spots, from what I've been told, I'm doing fine because I'm not evasion. But either way, just make sure you know what class you're playing. And if you need help, feel free to ask in the comments. I'm happy to help you, point you in the right direction. And basically, you get it to Capris 10 at level 10, and then you convert into the Dawn's Glove. And so blue is the accuracy version, which is what we have, and green is the evasion. Basically, if you convert Libras, you get the green ones. If you get Begs, you get the blue ones, right? Or, well, when you make it, you get the blue one, but then there's an option later on where you can convert from blue to green and green to blue. So it doesn't really matter. I'm glad that's an option, so... yeah, just keep that in mind. If all you care about is gear score, then get the green ones. If you actually want to be effective and you're like, trust me, I've played evasion as a Dark Knight. This was also like 4 years ago, and it felt fine to me, but like obviously as I get time goes on, we just know that evasion for DKs, that's not the play. So anyway, if you're confused, please ask in the comments, and I'm happy to point you in the right direction. Shoes. Currently, we do not have a Fallen God or Best in Slot upgrade, and right now we have Uragons and Muskins. Uragons is the DR route, and Muskins is the evasion. So basically, if we were to compare it to the gloves, Uragons would be the Begs, and Muskins would be the Libers. 13 bill. It is going up in price. That's kind of scary, actually. I feel like boss gear should always be going down in price as the years go on. And yes, evasion is cheaper because it's actually harder to stack more evasion. Like if you want to be very effective in PvP with invasion builds, you sacrifice a lot of damage to be tankier in a way. And most people just like being glass cannons in this game. It is what it is. So right now, you get what you are like what your class is built for, and then you Capris it all the way up to 20, and you wait for the new shoes to come out later on, and then profit, right? Fun stuff. All right, so let's talk about accessories now. This is kind of a tricky one because there's no right or wrong answer. It's how you think you want to build and what you do. So are you a life skiller? Are you a PvPer? Are you a PvEer? And that really depends on what you're doing. So if you're a beginner, chances are you did the Jatina quest, right? And of the 3 options from Jatina, as a beginner to intermediate player, I would always choose the Ring of Crescent Guardian because that just gives the most stats for like the least amount of silver, or like this is expensive to the point where I would recommend getting this early on because it's like 50 billion you don't have to spend. Whereas the 2 other items are not that price and give a little bit less stats and value. So as a beginner, Crescent Ring, always good. And you're probably wondering, what are the other ones I should get? So there's Eye of the Ruins, which is basically the equivalent of a Crescent Guardian, but it gives HP on the side per tier. And so I actually thought about getting it, but then when I got mine, I have Tungrads, and these are 100 bill. Well, I guess like we'll say between 95 to 110. So basically what you're going to be thinking of is 130 HP worth 1 extra AP in your eyes? And the real answer is what are you doing? Does that one extra AP per ring put you up into a new AP bracket? If so, then it's probably better and worth saving. If it doesn't, HP and survivability is always a nice option. But at the same time, how much do you value 1 AP at? If you value 1 AP at like 40 billion, then get the Tungrad. And then ominous rings are very expensive. These are considered the accuracy accessories because you trade off AP, but you get a bunch of extra accuracy, so 16 more, right? Now, remember when we were talking about the Zarka earlier in the beginning, and I was talking about Offhand and Zarka and how much value is the accuracy actually worth? So back then it was like, what, 18 AP or 18 accuracy? And here we're looking at 16, but the price is like 165 billion. So yeah, it's kind of worth getting accuracy early on and building towards that, because you will still have to get accuracy things later if you want to be very competitive in PvP. But that's also at the very late game, and you probably don't need my help at this point. So what I would do, if you are a beginner player, Crescent rings are just the way to go. Intermediate to endgame, you think about transitioning into Eye of the Runes or Tungrad. And then if you are, I would say in the top like 5%, and you do more PvP than PvE, then I would recommend considering accuracy accessories, not particularly this ring, but like accuracy accessories. So necklaces, we have Labreska, which is the AP best in slot. Lunar is the accuracy thing, which I think this is a good value. And then Ogres, Latents, and Tungrads. Ogres and Latents are the exact same thing. They just have a different name and a different picture. So whichever one is cheaper, 76 billion for an Ogre, 77 for Latent. They're the same exact thing. Get the Ogre because you save 1 billion. Tungrad necklace is basically the same stats as Ogre and Latent. The difference is it gives you 20% Black Spirit Rage. And realistically, Black Spirit Rage is very situational, and the chances are, if you get it, you're probably more into PvP and you're like large-scale PvP. So it's very specific. I don't think it's bad. It's just like whatever the price is, if it's cheaper than the rest of them, then by all means get this one. It's good enough. And then there's everything else. So lunar necklaces, actually they went down and they're pretty stabilized right now. So basically the same price as the ominous rings that we looked at. And I do actually believe that if you're going the accuracy route as an endgame player, your necklace and then belt slots are the ones that you want to get it. Otherwise, if you just want to go all accuracy meme and hit everything but do no damage, then you can get all of them. It doesn't matter. So Labreska, once again, best in slot earring for AP. Well, actually, let's pause there. Labreska is best in slot if you have the 3-piece set. The numbers come out to a little bit more. So I have a pen disto. It's 21 AP, but you lose 5 DP. And this one is actually a tricky one to talk about because some people contemplate, is this one even worth getting at pen? And the answer is you should be getting earrings once you already have the necklace and the belt at pen. That way, when you compare the extra 12 AP from the effect, it actually comes out to more stats than distos. And it really is considered the best in slot right now because it's very difficult to get. And it's just like you have to be at the top geared player, or like you just have to be at the top of the line to be able to get it. So chances are the rest of us, distos are the way to go. Narc earring is also a good choice to be. And Valha's Dawns are the same thing as distos, just from the Ataraxian dungeons, or distos are from grinding. Dawn earrings are the accuracy earrings, and what should you get? Well, chances are most people are going to get distos because that is the most commonly available. Why are there so many? Why are there so many distos just sitting? I think it's because the price of pen is so low. But anyway, chances are you're gonna get distos. And one question I would like to answer that I've gotten a lot is, when is the best time to transition into distortions? And the reason why we talk about this is you lose DP when you equip these, right? So like I'm losing 9 DP right now. So if I didn't have them, I would be at 430, but I would also have less AP. So I think the best time to transition into distos is when you already have full pen armors. It doesn't necessarily have to be like Fallen God, Labreska, and all this stuff. As long as you have boss gear at Capris 9, so roughly around like the 330 to 350 DP, is when I think I would start transitioning into distos, because by this point, you are probably around the 280 AP area if you're thinking about even getting Tet distos, because these are like 20 billion each. And if you've ever followed my guides on what items to get in what particular order, generally earrings are the last pieces you should always go for. So with that in mind, I assume you're in like the 270, 280 AP range, and you're wondering, should I get distos to upgrade? So 280 opens up a lot of grind spots, which are at high ends like Elvia Oryx and a lot of other Elvia spots. And Elvia Oryx actually do hit pretty hard. So you want to be sure you can grind efficiently, and just know that you'll be losing like 8 DP, assuming you have 2 Tets, and then 10 DP if you have 2 pens, which if you have that, then chances are you're over 400 DP anyway. So whenever you can grind like the Elvia spots very comfortably, without it, then I think that would be good to transition into the new ones. So yeah, with that said, next we have our belts. Labreska belts are the AP ones, at least noticing a pattern. Churros are accuracy. We have Basilisk belt, Voltara, and Tungrad. So Bassies are the base ones that most people will have. Voltaras are the ones I have. It's basically the same thing as Bassi belt, but it gives extra HP. And I valued the survivability over the Tungrad belt, which gives an extra 1 AP. So it is what it is. My goal eventually is to get Labreska. So is everyone, but it's easier said than done. And the new one is the Taybeck belt. Is this one good? And I think the answer is no, because this one is actually pretty interesting. Like I like the concept, I just don't think it's that good. So at Pen, if you look at these two items, the belt is 17 AP, whereas the Voltara is 20. The difference is the Taybeck belt gives an effect, like an extra skill when you have it. So I actually have one that I was trying to enhance at one point, and I was just like, I don't care, actually. So where is it? Okay, so yeah, I actually have a Pry belt. I just wanted to see how it worked. So at each level, you see the skill at the bottom. It's like a hot barable skill, and it just gives you 60 seconds with a huge buff. It's basically like E buffing, Q buffing, or whatever class you're on, and 1 minute of going hard. And the downside is when you have the buff and the skill is on cooldown, you cannot swap the belt. That's the downside. And so you're basically running at 1 minute of like God mode, and then the next 9 minutes you're gonna wish you had that 3 extra AP or more back. So is it worth it? I can't really think of too many scenarios where I think it is worth it. The things I've thought of were probably like if you're doing the boss splits weekly and you're just trying to do a score push and hard burn it, I think that might be the only thing. Otherwise, doing a coordinated siege push for that is something you would do in like node wars or sieges, and then that's it. So if you're a PvEer, it's not that good unless you do bosses, and even then it's probably still not worth it. But yeah, chances are most of us just go the AP route and you'll be fine. What's next? What do I want to talk about? I guess we'll talk about Alchemy Stones and all that good stuff. So, people are wondering, when is a good time to get your Alchemy Stone? The answer to that really is, when should you get a Vel's Heart? Because the rest of them is very hard to get. And you're probably wondering, how much is it? It's probably maxed out on all the servers, so 16.5 billion. It gives 3 AP. So whenever your next cheapest upgrade is more than 16.5 billion, that's when you get the Vel's Heart, because it gives more, and then you can upgrade it, and then gives you like basically 7 gear score total. At very end game, the players are going for Splendid Alchemy Stones, which give basically more attack and cast speed, which allows you to do things faster at the cost of a little bit of gear score trade-off. So yeah, that's one thing. After that, everything else, if you're a beginner, chances are you just want to use like a entry-level stone, or what I've done. If you are a life skiller, if you can still get the Trent's Tear from somewhere, I don't know if you can still get it. It was a seasonal reward, I think, a few years ago. But if you can still get it, this is best in slot for that. The Perilla's Star, if you are it's basically a PvE protection stone, and it gives 1 DP. So I think that's good. It actually, like, I would use this over the Alchemy Stone if I had to. And then if you're looking for an offensive stone, then probably just whenever you can get a Vel's Heart, get that one. All right, so that's basically all the gear I wanted to talk about. This was a 37-minute video, so I want to say, if you're still here, thank you guys so much for watching the video. I truly do appreciate it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help answer them. I know that this video was a longer one, so I'll put timestamps and all that cool stuff. But yeah, with that said, hopefully you enjoyed September's window shopping episode. If you did, drop a quick like on the video. And if you're new, hit that subscribe button. I would love to see you come back. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.